Hey everyone, and welcome back to Two Minds One Podcast. I'm Nathan,
I'm Raymond.
and it's episode 18.
18. Yeah.
18 weeks. That's a long time.
Yeah.
If we were a baby, we'd be. I think we'd have feet already.
Little feet.
Little tiny feet. But yeah, welcome everyone. Today, I had something interesting.
You just mentioned you wanted to talk about something.
An interesting conversation.
Okay.
With a friend of mine.
Ooh.
And we discussed how human beings at times can be, quote unquote, a slave to their nature in the sense of character flaws. Like if a person's character flaw is they're greedy, even that greed eventually ends up being the downfall of them, even when they, could have walked away.
Okay.
Kind of like a gambler. Right? Instead of, when they're up big, instead of walking away, they always want to be up bigger. The greed. Right?
Yes.
Could also be the thrill of things, but it's very interesting when you look at it and when you look at people's actions and what they do, what they don't do, and at times, especially when you're always looking from outside in, it's very much you've made that mistake before. Time has passed, yet you continue to make the same mistake.
You mean outside in from a third person perspective, right? Not a self.
No, outside in, yeah,
like a friend viewing a friend.
Yeah.
Or so forth. Okay.
Just a person viewing another person. Right? And it's interesting, like, a person who says they want to change and then they keep making the same mistake, and they don't change.
Yeah, that change is hard though. I mean, I don't mean it's difficult in the sense of doing it is difficult, right? It's in the sense that in order to change something, you must acknowledge it. That you do or are that thing.
Yeah, acceptance, right? It's
you gotta,
the first step.
Yeah, you gotta actually, I forgot what it was called, but you gotta literally be able to reflect on yourself. Self-reflection. And for most people, like 90% of the population, maybe 99%, it's extremely difficult. Because that means accepting your flaws. Accepting you mess up.
I agree. I think that is a big challenge for a lot of people. I don't think it's that people don't self-reflect, though. I think it's people do self-reflect, but they don't. They self-reflect and go,
No, but that's not me. They deny it.
They deny it or they distract themselves from it.
Yeah.
Because in our day and age, with all of the things you can do, especially with doom scrolling, social media and stuff, TV, YouTube, Netflix, you can distract yourself for a very long time and not face your problems or accept them or, know.
It starts with reflecting and acceptance in order to change. Right? And that comes in with, like you said, character flaws. Things that we realize, but we just self-excuse. No, I'm not that in that way. Or I don't do these. I'm actually a good person. We know a couple people that they say I'm a good person, but yet they don't do in some areas a good person thing, right?
Yep.
And it's not, you can be a good person, but in some areas of your life or your dudes, you don't. You're not great in that aspect. Right? I know I've done it. I feel I'm a good person, but I know that I've done some things in the past that I shouldn't have.
No, you accept the fact that you're human, you make mistakes.
I made a mistake, yeah.
But you work on what you think are the things that you need to work on.
Yeah.
Right? But it's interesting because we can have self-imposed, character flaws that we see, that you visually see. Like, for example, procrastination, right?
Yes.
Right?
Mhm.
That's that's self-imposed that you have control over and that you see, right? At least it's easier to see. And there's other ones that are harder to see internally that at times can only be seen externally. When someone else tells you, hey, in these situations, you have a tendency and or a pattern to do X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
And it's up to you to interpret and believe them or not. And most people, when that happens, they get hurt because it's hard. Hearing the truth sucks.
It hurts. Yeah.
It hurts.
But it only hurts at the beginning when you're first when you're first going down that journey of bettering yourself every day. It hurts at the beginning. When you first, it's like anything else, right? Something's hard when you first start it.
Yeah.
So that like I feel that's hard. That's
But
what hard is.
But what do people try to avoid?
Pain.
They try to avoid pain and they try to avoid discomfort.
Yep.
And what does change require? Requires a little bit of pain because you
and discomfort. Well, it covers pain and discomfort.
It requires both of those.
It requires both of them. Yeah.
Just like accomplishing anything
Yep.
requires both of those.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes it may not be physical pain, emotional pain, you know.
Either or.
But
Yeah.
it's and most of the time it relates to discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you want to accomplish something that is quote unquote difficult, it's going to require pain and discomfort.
Yeah.
If you want to run a marathon, well, guess what? To run those
6.2
26.2 miles, you're going to have to run over 100 miles.
Yep.
In your training. And it's going to be painful at the beginning, and you're going to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. But eventually, after doing it so often, you per se automate the process. You don't feel the pain is there. I'm not going to say it's not there, right? But it's not the same. It's like an example.
I feel like you become desensitized to it.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah,
because we adapt to survive.
Somebody tells me you did wrong in this X, Y, and Z, right? Or you act a certain way in X, Y, and Z, and it initially stings like, oh, dang. Okay, and then I'm like, okay, no, let me check it out. But I no longer feel that discomfort and anger and instantly want to defend myself.
Yeah.
The instant, no, but you do this and start attacking back. Like, no. It's like, okay, I hear you. It does initially. It's a small thing now. Not like before.
Yeah.
Before I know you would get defensive.
Yeah.
I would get defensive. Yeah.
It's a defense mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting. And the discussion that I had, people being, slaves to their character, was more of people committing the same mistakes over and over again. And
expecting a different outcome.
Yeah. Right? And it's interesting because when you look at it, it can either be that the fact that we are slaves to our nature, right? Which then gives credence to the nature versus nurture, or the fact is that, which is what I think, that we're not slaves to our nature, that we can change, but it's just difficult, right, to change a defining character aspect of oneself, and
yeah,
and do it consistently, because like you said, it's not inherently hard to do it one time. That's not the hard part. The hard part is to do it consistently over and over and over again, and you're gonna relapse. You're gonna make the same mistake, and you're gonna go, God damn it, I've been working on this. How is it possible that I made this mistake, right? And what people will need to understand is that it's part of the process. It's part of the process. The goal isn't to just never make the mistake again. That is the end goal, but that's an unrealistic goal, right?
The goal is to
make it so that it's not
as frequent.
Exactly.
Extremely rare.
An extremely rare occurrence.
Yeah. That.
Right?
Very
and
true.
So, like anything, it's easy to eat healthy one time. It's easy to go to the gym one time. It's easy not to yell at your boss one time. It's easy not to get mad at your partner one time.
Yeah.
It's all these one-time things are easy. The hard part is the consistency and the level of control.
The hard part is the consciousness that it takes.
It's the accountability.
Yeah. Right?
Right? When you look at when people that want to change, that need external help, a lot of the times they don't need someone to tell them what to do, because most of the time people know what they need to do. Most of the time people know that if I want to change the fact that I'm always angry, I need to figure out what's causing me to be angry and not let other things affect me and let me get angry. But the problem is you need to hold yourself accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is people struggle with holding themselves accountable, and they reach for an external source to keep them accountable. A therapist, a friend, a partner, a trainer, right? A nutritionist, a dietist, right? Someone else to be there and be like, no, don't do that, no. And it's very interesting. It's
but see, but it's also easier. I feel it's also easier when you have someone keep you accountable to fall back, per se.
Because you don't have to blame yourself.
Yeah.
It's always easier. It's hard.
It's hard for you because it hurts you inside, because you know consciously. You know.
Yeah,
like
people know.
Like
you make a mistake. If you're on a diet and you eat, a burger, you're like, damn. You shouldn't have done that.
You feel guilty. You feel ashamed.
You feel ashamed
of yourself, and then
right.
And people come up with excuses. We all do it, right? All of us. Yeah. We all do. Come on. Oh, no. It was just one time.
I deserved it. It was a long day. It was stressed,
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah. And the hard part of keeping yourself accountable and changing things is that sometimes, especially those deep characters, like, that are like they're character flaws, but they're also part of you, like a character of you.
Personality, yeah.
Yeah. Is that you do those unconsciously sometimes.
Yep.
Without thinking, automated.
Yep.
Right? Which is the end goal of anything you want to do, is to automate the system so less brain power goes to right? But it's every time you do it, you have to be so conscious of what you're doing consistently, so you can actually catch yourself and so, okay, I'm gonna try not to do it this time. Like,
and I feel like a lot of people, I'm not saying that a lot of people are not conscious when they're making decisions, but they're not conscious to the level of scrutinizing their own decisions before they make it. Like, for example, you hear the saying, I said that without thinking.
Yeah.
A lot of times when people say things that they don't mean because they're angry, emotional, or whatever, right? And
it's because they just spoke with their mind, what the first thought that came to mind. Yeah. They didn't think about what would happen afterwards, or how they would affect the other person, or how it's said, in the tone of voice. Because it could be the same
message, but said 10 different ways.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I didn't say he hit his wife.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't say he hit his wife. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And stuff like that. And so,
I didn't say he didn't hit his wife.
Yeah. So stuff. Yeah. It's interesting. And that holding oneself accountable is directly related to a thing that I believe it's either neuroscience or psychologists call I'm blanking on the word. Self-control. So,
or impulse control.
So, for a long time, it was thought that people were either just good or bad at self-control, right? For a long time, people thought that it was a skill, right?
Mm-hmm. It
turns out, thanks to science,
it's a muscle.
No, but it's more like a meter, right? It's like it's a you have a self-control meter of how much you can, of how much, what item you're controlling takes
how
up
much
of that
willpower.
Meter. Yeah, exactly,
okay.
Right?
Uh-huh.
And that meter gets depleted throughout the day. So at the beginning of your day, you woke up, you're rested, there's not really any stressors, you have your highest amount of self-control. And at the end of your day, midnight, when you've been through all the ups and downs of the day, right? You had the least amount of self-control, right? At least for a normal person, like normal day to day, right? And what they found is there are certain things that can affect how much self-control you have available to you at any time. Obviously, there is emotional regulation. So if you constantly have to regulate your emotions, right, you're going to have less window of self-control for other things outside.
Okay, right? That brings to the question. Then there's people that they just have like days on end of consistently having that self-control. So right? Those people that are and it seems like they have an endless bar.
But let me say why. Let me tell you why. Mm-hmm. So they found that two major things: emotional regulation and stress affect how much self-control you have. People are stressed. That's why they stress eat. They lash out or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Because their self-control is dwindling. What they found is the moment internally in your brain that you stop fighting the urge is the moment you lose self-control. So the moment you say, I'm not going to think about this anymore, is the moment you've instantly lost the battle. Mm-hmm. Because at that point, you become a slave to your reactionary behavior. You're not gonna,
you react to things.
You react to things, and you're not in control. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yes.
And what they found is that keeping yourself in that battle of debate of should I not, helps reduce your bar of, helps keep your bar of self-control intact, right? And they found that any form of removing oneself from the situation or aka being present, they called meditation, or whatever you consider your meditation is, right? For some people, it's taking a walk. Some people, it's listening to music and spacing out for 15 minutes.
Okay.
Right? For some people, it's working out. And it's things like that rejuvenate your bar of self-control, that allow you to do things, right?
So,
and then also you want to formulate your life and lifestyle where you're not plagued by so many decisions, because your body also runs into decision fatigue.
Yes.
Which affects,
It affects a lot of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So that kind of sounds like this other thing I heard. You're constantly in stress, especially when you're learning new things. Is that right? You're learning something new. You're trying out something new, or you're trying to change something. Mm-hmm. Because it's so much work to do the X thing, it's stressful, right? It takes a lot of your concentration.
Yes.
A lot of your energy, which then distracts you from other things. Mm-hmm. But the end goal of everything that you're trying to learn is to learn it so well, do it so often, that you automate it, that you no longer think of doing it. An example, learn to drive manual. A thing that a lot of people these days do not know and don't want to, because they're like, why do I want another pedal? Now I got to also worry about shifting. But when you first start, you notice it does seem like a lot. And it's realistic. It does seem like a lot, because you got to drive. You got to figure out the clutch and accelerate, right? You got to figure out when to shift. You got to figure out when to stop. You also got to remember to shift at certain points.
Yeah, remember to pull the car out of gear.
Yeah, you got to, when you come to a stop, you got to remember when you're up a hill, the car's going to roll down. Mm-hmm. So you got to do it a little bit faster. All that. But as you do it more often, it becomes automated. It no longer becomes a stressful thing. So you're doing it without thinking. You're literally giving no thought.
It becomes muscle memory.
1% thought process in doing it, which is relaxing. It is like those people that say, those journeymen, right? Or the masters of their craft. They just been doing it so long. They're like, I enjoy it now because I just do
peace.
It. It's peace.
I just do.
And that's relaxing.
I don't think. Exactly.
And that's relaxing. So the goal is to master something to the point of being able to do it without thinking. Giving it, because then Like we wonder why professional race car drivers can drive these cars at these speeds in the Formula One, especially with Formula One, and do all these things, right? Like a Formula One driver adjust their brake bias on every turn or multiple turns. They adjust their traction, they adjust their torque settings. All this while driving 150 plus miles an hour and braking and turning and thinking about apex
and thinking about the tire
entering
wear.
speed, tire wear, tire temperature, all these things. How do they get to be able to manage all of this? By slowly doing more of them consistently. And so a lot of them are now,
It's reflexive.
it's reflexive. There's like, oh, this turn, this brake, bye bye. They don't even think about it. And you're like, how do they do it so fast? It's because their mind now, some things are automatic. They don't so much need to think about their braking point as much anymore, or their entry speed, or certain things. They worry, now they have energy to detect, to point to somewhere else, to use it somewhere else.
Yes. And it's the
Right?
same thing in anything else. Like a sport. If you ever started playing a sport for the first time, it's fast. There's a lot of shit going on. There's a lot of information going on. And you're like, wow, there's a lot I got to think about this. I got to think about offense. I got to think about defense. I got to think about, if you're playing one with teammates, you got to think about teammates. You got to think about positioning.
The awareness of my
your
teammates.
and all that, right? And there's a lot of information to process. And you always hear that when an athlete, gets to a certain point, the game slows down for them.
Seems like time has slowed down.
Yeah, the game slows down for them. And what
Yep.
they mean for that isn't obviously literally the game slows down, because the game is still being played at whatever pace the
It's
game is
being
being played
played.
at.
Yep.
But it's that they're so accustomed to all of the decision making, all of the information that they need to input.
That some of it is automated.
That a large majority of it is automated, and they can focus the remainder of their brain power
On the adjustables.
the things that they can
The
change.
variables.
Yes.
Yep. The things that can vary per game.
Yes,
Or per situation.
And they can see and essentially read the environment better
Yep.
and make better decisions, which is why you can tell a veteran, player at any sport versus a rookie, right? Because a rookie, when you see them play, and the way that the almost like the aura they exude is one of like. And the veteran rush, and the veteran's very much like not slow and methodical, but very much so like confident, methodical, knows, like, has been in this situation many times, understands what's on the line, and it's
Has seen outcomes.
almost soothing to them, right?
Yep.
Right. And it's like it's the same thing in work and business too,
It's the same thing.
because
And
people, when you first get into your first really really stressful situation, it feels like everything's fucking coming at you at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and you're like, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck, and then your umpteenth time, you're like, yeah, okay, well, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do this because we can't control this, so we're gonna see how that outcome comes out.
Yep.
And
Or it's too early to say what's gonna happen
yeah,
there.
and you don't feel as claustrophobic or as stressed out as you would the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that for a lot of things in life.
And I think that learning those things, getting to that point in things of your life, resets. It's like you're saying, resets your patience, your self-control meter, because now you've taken the stress out of the thing you're doing every day. Right? It's automated, so it's like like driving.
It's like driving.
Like for me, driving is relaxing. I'll go driving in the car. I'll go mountain. I'll go anywhere. It's relaxing because I do a lot of it without thinking so much, and I only think on certain things.
Yeah.
It.
But for most people, driving is already a reflexive thing, right? And they it's very common. People say, "Yeah, I went on autopilot," or you're going somewhere, right, with someone, and you make a wrong turn. Because the direction that you're going in is generally in the same direction of some other place you go to all the time.
Yep.
Right? And you go,
oh,
shoot. Like autopilot was on. Let me turn around.
Yep.
Right? And I know that happens to everyone at least once.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you drive consistently. It's interesting because the human brain adapts. Because when you're stressed out, when you're worried like that, right? Your brain produces... the stress chemicals that I can't remember what they are, and your body goes
cortisol, right?
I think it's cortisol. Yeah, it's cortisol.
Yeah.
Right, and it's like, okay, we can't continue to keep having this much level of cortisol. Right, so we need to learn to do something to reduce this or to adapt it, or we need to learn that we're going to be in this situation consistently and often enough to the point to where we're not going to need to release cortisol every time we're in this situation.
Yep.
Which then reduces your stress amount, which then increases your, your ability to have control. Right?
Yes. It's amazing.
It's fascinating, yeah.
To see what we are capable of if we just push ourselves. It's like Alex Hormozi says. I mean, he says, do something 10,000 times. He goes, do something for 10,000 times and tell me it doesn't become easy. Like, it's like in nature. Simpler. Like, he's like, I didn't like speaking to people. I wasn't a people, right? A crowd
person.
Speaker. He goes,
public speaker.
But I did it 100 times a day for 5 years. He goes, well, with my gyms, right? And so he says it. If you're gonna learn to do something, do it 10,000 times.
Yeah. Right, and it's
or what's the saying? Do something for 10 years, and you're called a master at it.
Yeah. Yeah, and another thing I really like that's not related to this topic, but the difference between the apprentice and the master is that the master has failed 10,000 more times than the apprentice. Right? That's why the master knows so much.
Yep.
Right? And most people think that the master is just perfect. The reality is no, the master has had many, many years of failures and victories to learn from.
Yep.
Right? And unfortunately, the greatest teacher is failure.
There is no better
There
teacher.
is no better teacher. It's hard and it hurts a lot of the time.
Yep.
But failure is one of the greatest motivators and one of the greatest teachers. Right?
If taken the correct way, it could also be one of the greatest
debilitators. Yes.
You can fail and it can
utterly crush you.
Like you just lose all hope, depression, and
yeah. But see at that point it comes to perspective. Like I feel like we may have touched upon this in a previous episode, but I feel like a lot of people nowadays understand perspective, but they don't give it any credence in the sense where you tell them, well, hey, like your life is you claim your life to be so, your modern difficulties to be so hard and all these things to be so challenging, but it's like, hey, be glad you weren't born when the bubonic plague was still a thing, ravaging the entire all of Europe and Africa,
or during World War II.
Be glad that you weren't one of the people that had to storm Normandy, right?
Yeah.
And at times they're so apathetic of like, ugh, it's not my problem. My problems are here and now.
Yeah.
But it's that short-sightedness of understanding that, hey, you don't ever get to choose when you're born or what time you're born into or what you're born into, right? You should be grateful for what you do have, right? And you should also have the good enough perspective to understand that it could always be worse.
Yeah. So look at the bright side, basically.
Exactly.
Of your life. Yeah. That reminded me of this monk I saw on a TED Talk talking about the reason there's a lot of that what you're talking about, right? People, my life, or a lot of people depressed, or a lot of people having these other certain things that didn't happen as often, right? Was they have the time now.
They're running into the philosopher's issue.
They have the time to analyze these things because back in the day we were so busy. The monk said, we had to farm, we had to get up, grow our own food, tend to it every day, clean it, do everything ourselves every day, hunt.
Yeah, right? Up until, I think the statistic was until the last 1,000 years, 800 years, majority of humans' lifespan was spent working towards living. And now, the percentage of your person's life that works towards living is, we'll say 50% of the time, but before it was 90% of the time. Free time
Was
and
not a
boredom
It was not a thing.
did not exist back then.
You had something
Those
to do
are
always.
luxuries.
Yes, but the first world luxuries, and maybe second world luxuries, and
No,
the
but
third world, like
yeah.
they're
They're luxuries.
still.
But they're still luxuries, regardless.
Oh, for sure.
Right? Because
Yes.
you can be in a third world country, still have all your physical needs met, and emotional needs met, and experience these things. And they are, from a certain perspective, they're luxuries because you don't have to worry about living. You don't have to worry about shelter. You don't have to worry about water. You don't have to worry about war. You don't have to worry about famine. You don't have to worry about all these other
Weather.
things,
Yep.
right?
This is about
a luxury.
sleeping in finding shelter in the weather
Yeah.
storm or
Which is why you don't see philosophy in things that question, stuff come up until humans had essentially very large cities and civilizations.
so we automated our survival,
Yes.
which gave us the freedom
to think.
to think.
Why am I here? What is my purpose?
So could be that the fact that we automated our survival, right? We adapted and mastered it to a sense, right? To a degree. Which then could have raised, like, to me, right? So my interpretation could have raised our IQ to be able to now think of other things and start questioning, like, wanting more knowledge of the universe, of what this planet, of why does the fruit grow?
Well, on average, the IQ has grown with generation after generation. So on average, the human population is getting smarter and smarter.
Which
is why it's, significantly more difficult to do, to do new things and to, get into Ivy League colleges, because before, when there was, 80 years ago, trying to get into Harvard, right, there was, a few valedictorians with 4.0 GPAs and perfect scores, and now there's thousands.
Oh yeah.
Thousands.
So it could be that we automate things like our brains grow, right? Because it's a muscle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we adapt, we get smarter, slowly.
Mm-hmm.
Which then has caused us to ask these questions of philosophy: why are we here? Figuring out emotions, figuring out that we react to emotions, because these are very
All
advanced subjects to be taught.
Psychology is a field that is, I believe, under 100 years old. So is sociology, which are the studies of the human mind and of the human behavior.
Right, and then studying DNA, like getting down to that level of knowledge. It's
all fairly new science. So it's really interesting to see how far we've come, and how the fact that all of your needs are met allows you to think, what do I want to do? What am I? What is my purpose? Why am I here? And a lot of these questions are scary questions for a lot of people, right? Because unfortunately, a lot of your life, if you grew up in a modern world, it's frankly told to you. You're told what to do. You're told how to act.
yes.
You're told who to hang out with, who not to hang out with. You're told what is cool, what isn't cool.
Your choice of freedom doesn't really start till way later in life.
Yes.
Which
Right. Or if you do not listen to what everyone else is, right, you're ostracized and made to think that you're not one of us. You're different.
yes.
Right, just because you think differently, because you act differently, because you are different,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's interesting because that then affects how you grow up, right? Because it poses an interesting question. I think the question was: are you who you are because that's who you want to be, or are you who you are because that's what society has dictated and told you?
I mean,
'Cause your
psychiatrists,
environment-
there's psychiatrists that say that the most impactful thing on raising a human child is not so much the household, right? The household puts in like the groundwork.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really influence. They set the hard stones.
The foundations.
The foundations. It is the community or your neighbors,
the people that your child interacts with,
that influence the most
mm-hmm.
in their life, in the way that they will,
in the way that they
interpret or view or
yeah.
You
see it in just a clear distinction between more affluent families and families that are in poverty.
Mm-hmm.
Their goals and aspirations are so, not to be mean to them, because they're still completely valid goals and aspirations, but they're limited and or short-sighted. It's
because it's not something they see in their life.
It's not for a kid growing up in poverty. It's not, I want to be a doctor. It's, I want to have it so that there's food on the table every night.
Yep.
I want to be it so that I can make rent every night.
And then they get there and their kids are like, I want a house. I want to be a doctor. I want
and
to.
So, and then you take an affluent family, and they see so much more opportunity, even in career wise. Right?
Oh no,
in comparison
they're
to poverty, right?
These...
You look at how many
poverty people don't.
How many people in poverty?
Real poverty don't think about going to college. Really,
no. It's not even going to college. It's there's something about survival, but it's even just looking at this. How many people from lower incomes always say, "I want to be a professional athlete"?
Mm-hmm.
It's a large percentage. How many people from a more affluent family or society or right say, "I want to be an athlete"? Significantly less.
Yep.
They say, "Oh, I want to be a doctor. I want to be an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be a professor." They understand that there is more than one way to see success, right? And that's influenced to them by who they have around them, right?
Yeah.
And it's not a knock to any person born in either situation, because ultimately we don't dictate what we're born into.
Yep.
Right.
Like where you're born does
affect
your opportunities.
Yeah. Affect your starting point.
Yes.
And how you view the world.
Yep.
Right. You see it in how people's limited scope of, for some people, it's, I want to get a house, and that's it, and that's fine.
But it's understandable, right?
It's 100% understandable.
It's like you come from a household that lives off of $20,000 a year, which is poverty. And trying to imagine I'm gonna start a business and make millions and own 300 properties, X yachts, whatever. It's a reach. Such a stretch.
Yeah. It's such a stretch.
Because even to do that in one generation is difficult. They sacrifice.
It also helps that people in that scenario are more likely to tell that person, even if that is their dream.
Yeah. They're more likely to
be realistic.
Be realistic, yeah. Don't
look at where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Versus, a person
in affluent, even their dreams are
chased
course. After.
Yeah,
go.
Of course. Yeah.
Man,
and you're also afforded more opportunities for failure.
Yes.
In an affluent community or family than you are in a poverty one. Why? Because your margin for error is higher.
Mm-hmm. Well, your risk to
your margin for error is higher.
Yeah, your safety of coming out of something, of it affecting you largely, is low.
Exactly.
Right?
Margin for error.
Yeah.
It's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I was watching a video on this, how when you have this is like now society, right? When you have money or you have opportunities, it's like the world just gives you more of that.
Yeah.
Without, and when you're on
snowball.
When you're on the other end, you also get, and I remember it was reading Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules of Life. It was in his first chapter, talking about the first rule: stand up straight with your chest out, chest held high.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because he said that it just shows even in all animals, not just humans. Even he used crabs as an example. Crabs sit at the bottom of the ocean, and they sit there and they try to find the best area where food just falls, right? And they can eat, and they find the best shelter.
Yeah.
But they fight for it, right? And so they studied crabs, and they noticed that the crab that wins the most ends up getting more, and the crab that consistently loses ends at the bottom of the barrel, right, or the bottom society of their society, keeps getting shafted. Just keeps getting the short end of things, like more often than not. And it's not. There's no explanation as to why they're not doing anything different. They're not.
I think
it's.
So I'm not going to say to claim to be smarter than all the researchers who did this, but I think it's just the universal law of distribution.
Yes.
It's the universal law of distribution where
That's
the
the
top
law he talked
10% keeps 50% of whatever it is. And then by the rest of the 90% compete for that other 50, which is highly interesting. And it's a universal distribution. You can even attribute it to words. Words like I, a, the are used significantly more than words like performance, you know?
Affirmations.
Like affirmations, yeah. Like words that are not always in use.
Which is why he said, stand up straight. And because essentially these actions, these ideas produce serotonin versus the other. We just said it earlier. Cortisol. These actions help you produce certain chemicals, or hormones that help you be more on the. Man,
I know what you're trying to get to. The way I've always described it is you wake up in the morning and you do one good thing that makes you feel good, whether it's take a shower, brush your teeth, go to the gym, go for a run, feed your dog, get to work on time, or whatever it is that that makes you go, yeah, you feel good.
And when you feel good, you're more likely to keep getting more good things.
Yes. You're more likely to make essentially inherently better decisions.
Yep.
When you feel good versus when you feel bad, right?
Yeah.
And so that affects the rest of your day. It's like a snowball.
Yep.
Right? So it's a snowball at the beginning. It starts really small, and it takes a lot of effort to get it to move and roll to get bigger. But at a certain point, it gets so big that its surface area, by it just contacting the ground,
is huge.
It's huge.
It just rolls. It just goes through anything.
Exactly.
Yep.
And it's the same, from my understanding, the same way with life, right? Which is why you see winners win, and they win always. You see losers lose,
and they always
lose. Right? But the unfortunate truth is that in order to have winners in a game, in the game of life, and whatever you want to call it, there must be losers. Unfortunately, there must be an equal exchange. Right?
Because nothing is created.
Yeah, and that's just something you do have to understand. And you have to...
it's like that in the universe, right? There's only so much mass and energy in the universe. We cannot create nor destroy the energy. It's only converted.
Yes, it only changes shape.
Yeah.
Changes form.
So it goes from one end to the other or to somewhere else.
But yeah, it's quite interesting. So to touch back on the fact of people being slaves to their natures, to answer the question, the thing that I came up with was no. Because, like you said earlier, your environment also plays a big factor into who you are, into what your core traits and beliefs are, which are part of your nature.
Yep.
Right? And in the nature versus nurture, argument is very muddled because it's been something that, psychology has argued forever. And I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not going to claim to have the answer to it, but I can tell you what my personal belief is that you can have your nature, and if you have the right environment, right, you can change it. Right? It's not easy, but it also has to come, and it's not that something that's always going to happen. It has to come from within oneself to make that decision.
Yes.
Constantly.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're saying, like, I want to be a truthful person. Okay, well, you constantly, every day,
Be
have
truthful.
to do that. Be truthful,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's just like, yeah, that's just what it is. And yes, some people, as you know, we said winners. There's a lot of winners win and losers lose. Some people will be slaves to their nature,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's just the unfortunate distribution of the world. But I do believe that you have the power to change that.
I believe in that aspect. We all have the power to change that, and we
Yes.
can do something about our nature, things that we don't like,
Yep.
or feel that we can be better at. Right? It's a big thing I've noticed after growing up is people grow to a certain age, and then you kind of plateau in your knowledge or your growth.
There's a saying for this. It says it's applied to business, but I think it can also be applied to the person.
Mm-hmm.
Complacency is death. When a business becomes complacent, it dies.
Yep.
And you can apply that to a person, not in the sense of death, but when a person becomes complacent, they stop growing.
Yep.
And when you stop growing, you get left behind.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why that's why you have people that feel like, well, back in my day, because they've stopped growing with the times.
Yep. But you gotta
Right.
grow with the times.
You unfortunately have to grow and change with the times. But
That's all the time we have for today.
yeah, it's a pretty interesting conversation. We might touch
was.
upon this again in the future,
Mm-hmm.
with some guests. But thank you guys for having us.
Hope you enjoy.
Hope you enjoy. If you want to catch the audio version only of this, you can see the Apple podcast.
We'll put a link to the Apple Podcast in the description below.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Till next week.